Gonna go ahead. Okay, sweet. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and start off. Um, Michael, can you still hear me? Ed, can you hear me still?
Sure can.
Okay, awesome. All right, everyone, we have a couple of guest speakers today. One of them I personally know. Ed is from Henderson Engineers. I worked with him a little bit way back when he first started working at Henderson. Ed is in charge of InfoSec at Henderson, primarily more based on web-based stuff, a little bit of actual InfoSec, but he is the main guy for Henderson in-house. And then we have another guest speaker, Michael, is from Artic Wolf. Artic Wolf is an up-and-coming cybersecurity firm. They're actually on CNBC's top disruptor list for 2022, ranked number 17. They specialize in kind of a whole suite of cybersecurity. I was reading about it. It's very interesting stuff and how their platform works. They use AI, neural networks. They do stuff with human engineering. So they kind of go on every little sector of how to secure a company. But I'll give it to Ed real quick. I'll have Ed introduce and say what he kind of is in charge of, and then we'll hand it over to Michael and let him introduce himself, and we'll start going down the list of questions. So, Ed, I'll take it to
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Hey, Chance. Yeah, thank you for having us on here. I think I met you about 4 years ago, I guess 3 or 4 years ago. I'm the information security director over at Henderson Engineers and Henderson Building Solutions. Yeah, you had reached out and wanted to know what it was like to be in cybersecurity, and I have a lot of experience all the way back into the 90s. So thought I'd come on board. I will say that we are an Artic Wolf customer as well, and brought them on in kind of an analytics perspective for us, but I'll leave it there and let Michael pick up and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I'm Mike Williams. I am the currently the manager of the global SOC here at Arctic Wolf. I started in cyber at 18. I joined the military, did 7 years and some change in the military, then went out into the government, moved into contracting, and now into the private sector. So have a wealth of backgrounds in doing incident response and kind of digital forensics, and then moving into cyber, kind of fusion, if you will, fusing, intelligence and operations to do some threat-driven operations. So, yeah, I've been here at Arctic Wolf for 2 years and some change. And then we kind of grown to a huge organization here in the SOC, taking care of a lot of customers, doing the MDR, and then MDR, managed detection and response, and we just stood up our incident response arm so that we kind of can do more of the R in MDR. So I'll leave it there, and then we can open up the floor for our questions.
Sweet. I just want to say thank you guys for taking the time out of your day. I know you guys are busy people, but we do truly appreciate it. The students appreciate it, and we hear multiple times students wish they could get in contact with professionals in their degrees so they are able to know, what do I need to focus on? What should I go for? What should I do? What should I don't do? So your guys' experience and your knowledge is truly gold to many students, and we appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. I think the first thing that I'd like to start off with, if it's okay, is I know Ed was not in the college path, and that's fine, because I know a lot of people break into cybersecurity without a college degree, and that's still a very important thing to recognize. But I think still everyone would have a couple of tips for college students that are going along with their education. Do you have any tips? Do you have any strategies, any tricks that you'd recommend students to use or employ to A, better retain knowledge, or B, be able to expand their knowledge more efficiently? Ed, if you want to go ahead and touch base on that first.
I can jump in there. So I do have a degree, a bachelor's degree from DeVry. It's in telecommunications management. And so I really started my career back before there really was a cybersecurity, and like I said, in the 90s. And but I started as a network administrator, and then moved up through network administration, and basically by the early 2000s, I was managing information security teams doing compliance for PCI, that kind of stuff. And so spent time in data centers implementing PCI on virtual platforms. And so it's also spent some time doing web application assessments as well. So a lot of the things, back, when SQL injection was new, that's when I was doing a lot of assessments, those kind of things. A lot of the platforms today actually take care of the security issues that I was finding back in the day. And so it's been very organic. And I'm not saying that to say that college isn't good for it, but a lot of my experience is what tells me, what I need to do, the direction I need to go, what the ground truth is, And so I definitely think college is great. I think it's best for things like learning how to write. So, I'd say 80% of my job is being able to write well. A lot of the job is convincing and educating others that they need to do things in a secure way. And it's really tough to do that if you can't communicate well. So use the college to learn to write, learn to do things in a way that the business people are going to understand, understand the business that you're wanting to get into. I'm in engineering now, but I spend a lot of time on the financial side. And so learning how the finances worked and learning how to speak to people that know finances or know business, being able to talk to them about the risks that they are going to encounter at their level, with their same language is super important. Really the key to it. The technical stuff is kind of a given, and you need to know the interaction of systems. So I would say it's two things. If you can get classes that teach you to write and will make you practice writing, and get classes that will teach you what the business world is about and how the risks are applied at the business level. And then the other side of it is obviously learning as much systems as you can. How do DNS records interact with web applications that interact with the networking underneath, and one of the big things, like just recently, we were talking about how we're implementing IPv6. Are we going to have it in the environment? How do we test for it? You can't just scan IPv6 anymore. It's too big. You have to do it a different way. And so knowing how all those systems can be interact together is critical as well. So I would just say get as much experience on the technical side as you can get, and then pick up as much business and writing and communication as possible. And I'll stop there. Michael, do you have anything to input on that?
Yeah, so my experience is also different. Is I didn't go to college until after I got out of the military. So I would highly recommend the military. And that's another option, that you don't have to go to college in order to break into cybersecurity. The reason why I would recommend the military is because of the simple fact that within 3 years, you get work experience, which is huge, right? Like that's one of the biggest detriments to college, is that you don't have any work experience. So people are hesitant to pick you up because of the simple fact that, one, is competitive. A lot of people are going into the cyber industry that already have work experience or already have a foundation. So I think that college provides you a good theory and foundation of, okay, you can talk cyber, right? You can tell me about what phishing is. You can tell me about, specific attacks and stuff like that. But it's that hands-on piece that I think is missing in college. And whether that, I think maybe just because these programs are sort of new, they don't have the labs that they need, and in order to really build out like a cyber range, for example, like to really build on those hands-on to reinforce what you're learning in college. So college is just one way. As a manager who's a hiring manager, when I see people in with college, I know that they have at least a foundation and they can at least speak to it. The military to me is the best route in my opinion, and the reason why is because you 3 years of your life, from 18 or 17 to 21, you get 3 years of work experience doing things that people will never ever do in their life, right? So offensive cybersecurity, for example, going against nation states, right? You can only do that in the military or the government, right? You can't do that anywhere else in the world. So that work experience is huge. And then what happens is people understand, when you went through the military, you have a certain level of training, you have a certain level of discipline, and you also have been introduced to certain concepts that you may not get at an internship. The last path is the difficult path, but it's still doable, is self-taught cybersecurity, right? And that's a lot of YouTube. That's a lot of kind of going in, doing labs like Try Hack Me and Hack the Box and doing this stuff. But you have to show a repertoire of what you've done, right? Like if you have some GitHub and stuff like that. That's so one thing I think that college students, because we have a lot of feeder colleges here like UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio, that we do a lot of competitive hiring from to do internships. One of the biggest things I think that the people that are coming out of college or out of the military or even entry level analysts have is when you come into the cyber industry, you're doing technical interviews. These are not like, how's your day? What did you do? No, this is like, hey man, explain me how a phishing attack works. Okay, show me what encoding is in PowerShell. Like, what is base64 encoding? What does XOR encoding look like? So those technical interviews, I don't think that people are prepared for. Sorry, and I'll stop there.
I think it's a good point that you guys raised about the hands-on experience. And that was actually one of the reasons why I chose Fort Hays State, because it is a smaller school. However, unlike KU or K-State, I feel like Fort Hays is really trying to hammer in on that aspect, because you're right, college is more the writing, the theory, the foundations of it. We're actually opening up a incubator. It's called City. And what it's going to allow us to do is we'll have students that will be in cybersecurity that will allow to go out to small mom and pop businesses here in Hays or locally that need a bigger security posture. And Jason Zeller, the professor on the Zoom meeting right now with us, is the one that is actually heading that. And I think that's something that many colleges are missing out on. And when I heard about this coming to Fort Hays, I was kind of ecstatic because, you can do virtual simulations, you can do virtual labs, you can do so many exams, but the hands-on part is really what's key to really making that foundation complete. And with this incubator, we'll allow to have students to be able to go out to these businesses and actually practice hands-on. Hey, how do we set up a firewall? Hey, how do we start port forwarding? Hey, how do we make sure we're subnetting correctly, making sure our network's running efficiently? And that, I feel like in itself is something that many colleges are missing out on. And hopefully here, I think soon we're going to have that up and running within probably the end of this semester, early next semester. So I will be able to be fortunate enough to start experiencing that myself. And I'm very excited to be able to start going out there and just using those skills I've been learning to actually put out there. And not only that, we also see it for students as being able to put it on, a portfolio, say, hey, I was able to secure this business using these firewalls, this methodology, and be able to have something that when they go out to get hired and go out to find jobs, they can present and say, hey, I have experience in this, and this is what I've done already. And I think that could be beneficial too. So I think that was a great point raised. And I think it's something that other colleges need to start really doing. And, when we talk about just learning stuff, you can learn and say how many words you want to about the topic, but to know how to actually do it and go about it efficiently is a whole nother subject. And I'm excited that we're bringing this incubator to Fort Hays State. And it's the first of its kind in Kansas. So we're really excited about it. And it's going to be something that's, I think, going to be very beneficial to students. I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit real quick. And just kind of tell us what your day-to-day life looks like. Ed, I know yours is going to be a little bit different than Michael's, and I'm excited to hear kind of how each differs. And if you want to go ahead, Ed, just tell me and let us know how your day looks like.
Yeah, so a lot of my day is, I don't know if you remember when you were at Henderson, but we do a lot of reviews. So when I came in, they didn't really have a whole lot, and so we started doing reviews. I mean, that's kind of key. How do you know what the ground truth is? And then when you see the anomalies from that, how do you know that you're moving off your what you're supposed to be doing, what is actually a risk versus not a risk. And so kind of my day and week, honestly, kind of surrounded around those reviews. It's interesting because one of the things I do as part of my review cycle is I look for my Artic Wolf alerts. And so I'm, my inbox, I get up in the morning and open my email, and there may be 2 or 3 Artic Wolf events there that they've sent over that I need to review and see if there's something we need to take more action on or need to talk to a user about. So it definitely starts there. And then I usually run through the news. look at US CERT, look at usually Ars Technica, just go through the news and see what big, there's any big things there that I need to know about, because inevitably you're going to get questions. If it's in the news, you're going to get questions from management. And that's not the only reason I do it. It's good to be informed and to know if we have issues that we need to jump on quickly. But also, I need to be the guy that gives people assurances that we either need to do something more, or no, that's a vulnerability that we're already patched up on. We don't need to worry about it. And so that's kind of part of my role, is giving them that assurance that we're either okay, or we do need to spend some money in the right spots to make sure that we're covered for whatever's going on. And so that's part of it. So that's probably every morning, look at the exploits, see if there's anything out there we need to deal with, and then do some reviews, looking at things like login reports, patch reports, new users. So I'm constantly looking at all these various different reviews to see, if you see a new user that's, doesn't match, has some different names, then you know that, hey, we need to go see what that's about and see why things. 99.8% of the time, it's innocuous stuff that we don't have to do too much with. But sometimes you will have something that comes up where you're like, hey, that's not something we want to have installed, or that's not the type of user account that we use and give rights for things. We don't share accounts, things like that. So always looking for those kind of things. And then I'm in meetings frequently for decision making. So I'll end up in service desk meetings and network team meetings and committee meetings with the various different I'm in some of the directors meetings, and then we talk about how we're doing things, and or if we need to discuss if we're implementing a new security requirement, or if we have a new service that's coming up. And then I have things that I have to do around contracts. So we get contracts from clients that they have specific requirements that they want, and they want to know if we can meet them. So I have to respond to clients, respond to our business people to let them know that yes, we either can meet the security requirements being asked for, or no, they want ISO 27001 implemented tomorrow, and we're not going to do that. That's not something we're going to be able to do. And so, yeah, answering questions about contracts and just reviewing them and make sure we have all the insurance requirements, from cybersec insurance to just your typical response insurance, things like that.
Okay, sweet. And then Michael?
Sure. So I'm going to tell you what our triage entry level analysts do, instead of what I do, just because that will more align to some of the audience. So what our triage analysts are is, when you come and work for a security operations center or a SOC, you're going to be doing shift work, right? You're going to be doing nights, sometimes weekends, sometimes day shifts, mid shifts, stuff like that. So it depends on what shift you're on and what your responsibilities are going to be. But usually you're always going to be monitoring a board, right? So alerts are going to come in and hit your board. You're going to have to triage those alerts and use your knowledge that you have gained. Sometimes we have run books here. We have run books here for like all tier one. So anything that comes into tier one, there's a run book that okay, you need to pivot on this unique artifact. Okay, you need to look for this specific activity, this specific alert. So that kind of gets you into the entry level of understanding, okay, this is what we tie everything to the MITRE attack model, right? So another recommendation I would tell the audience is to get in and know and love the MITRE attack model and understand backwards and forwards. So like when an incident hits my board, where am I at the MITRE attack model? If it's Mimikatz or Cobalt Strike or Impact It, if it's some well-known Metasploit, some well-known tools, where's the adversary at in the MITRE attack model? Because what that helps you do is it allows the entry-level analyst to try to paint the picture for what's going on. What log sources do I need to go review, or do I need in order to kind of correlate all that data together? And then what has the adversary already completed? So if they're dropping Mimikatz on a box, right? So that's credential harvesting in the MITRE attack model. Well, then I know they probably already established persistence. They definitely got execution, because that's how they dropped Mimikatz. They probably have privilege escalation already, because, unless depending on how the organization set up, it usually has to be an administrator to, kind of download and install tools. So they have an administrator, kind of privileges. So those are the things that entry level analysts are looking at to try to figure out, how do I paint the picture? So there's kind of three things here at Artic Wolf that we kind of owe the customer, right? So the first thing is log analysis. Obviously, we're going to analyze the logs in the SIM. The second thing is a timeline of activity, painting that picture, or the scoping the incident. Like, when did it happen? How did it happen? Why did it happen? And then something also called root cause analysis. We don't want to just send a ticket over and say, hey, this adversary dropped Mimikatz in the box. well, we kind of owe them the why and the how. How did it happen, and root cause? Like, why did it happen? What led to this breach of their security systems, or security policies and stuff like that, right? So that's typically what a tier one analyst is going to do. They also, take inbound calls from customers and see if they can answer those questions or route them to someone who can. And then the last thing that they kind of do is they triage tickets. So not only are you working on a board and ticketing out specific activity that you can, and then routing those things that you can't up to tier two, but you're also doing ticket work. So maybe a customer comes in and they say, hey, I want this activity to be reviewed. Like, I think that this domain administrator shouldn't be signing out at 1 a.m. and they were doing some various different things with PowerShell. Well, the tier one analyst is going to look at that and see, are they capable enough to, answer the customer's question? If they're not, then they can, move it up. We do a lot of mentoring. We do a lot of Zoom war bridges. So you're going to be joining a Zoom war bridge with like 40, 90, 100 people in there, so that people are asking questions. And then our senior people are always sharing their screens, showing people how they're tackling things. So you kind of have on the job training, through that. And once again, I'll stop there. That's typically a day in the life of an entry analyst.
Yeah, that was interesting because I was reading up, Michael, on Arctic Wolf and how they do their day-to-day stuff. And I was seeing, going to your website, seeing how it works. And you guys do have kind of a top to bottom structure where you have the why, the how, when it happened. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of companies don't do that, or they stop in certain areas kind of short, or they'll just provide their own tools and say, hey, this is what happened, and move on, instead of teaching the consumers and the customers, this is how you prevent it from happening again. This is why it happened in the first place. And I feel like it's, and like what Ed was saying before, needing to learn how to talk to consumers and customers to a level that they can understand, and a level where they can apply this information, so that way it doesn't happen again. And I think it just builds on Ed's point, like what you were saying earlier. It just makes a lot of sense. One thing that's kind of comes up a lot in, when you're talking about computer science people or cybersecurity people, is how do you maintain a good work-life balance? Because there are a lot of ways where you can get ahead of yourself, you're in over your head, and burnout is really high in this field. How do you guys go ahead and prevent that from happening? Is there any ways that you guys employ, or any tricks that you could maybe talk about? Ed, I'll hand it off to you.
Sure. Well, I've been at it for about 25 years. And so I think first it's a passion. If you don't have a passion for it, then you really have to go find something else, because it's, I'm not gonna say it's thankless. There's lots of things. I mean, IT in general, and I think of cybersecurity, I almost never think of cybersecurity alone. I'm always in the IT mindset, because that's where I've come from. Availability is part of the triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And IT is all about availability. The only difference I'll say, the biggest difference for me is that in cybersecurity, you're not as much about service provisioning, where in the rest of IT, you're a service organization. You're trying to provide good service, where in cybersecurity, you have to add risk to that equation, where you're saying, okay, sure, we want to provide a service, but we want to provide it at a certain risk level. And if that risk level is too high, then we have to start balancing back away from the service level. And I will say that's really the biggest difference. But I really think when it comes to like work-life balance, or what work is like, I really think in terms of IT. And I think everyone should that are in this business, because it is. Think about any part of IT that doesn't have security tied to it. I mean, from the firewalls to the patching to the software installation to how we handle users, what we do with users, how they're logging in. I mean, every bit of it. You could almost say IT is security today, just because of the amount of data. And so, I mean, Chance, that I don't have any analysts that I've hired underneath me, because I use the network team. I use the service desk. I have dotted lines to every one of them. Every one of our service desk people knows how to handle a phishing report from a user. I mean, they know these things. They know how to handle password changes. They know how to handle all these things that you would think are security. And so what I'll say is build a good team. You can't do it alone. You'll never do it alone. Talk to your end users, talk to your clients and your customers, and then talk to the people that have to support you, and make sure that you're working with them so that they know how to do the things, so they don't have to call you on every single thing. Now, I've been at kind of a director level for a long time. I mean, my first director position was 2008. So my experience, like what Michael was talking about down at the kind of an analyst position level, is very far removed. So back when I was doing web assessments and that kind of work, I very much was just passionate about the technology. And you could have me working for 16 hours straight, and I think it would be the best. Nothing better than a good solid compromise to go dig into at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm ready for it. These days I don't do it that way. I'm pretty far beyond that. But I will say planning. Make sure you plan well. Give things to your calendar. Let it own them. Put it on the calendar. Once it's on the calendar owns it. You don't need to think about it. So you can move beyond that. So planning is good. And then setting boundaries. If a lot of, and I'll say a lot of this, one of the things that I really had an aha moment about boundaries was you'll meet people who are in the security field that everything is like 100%. Like the system's not patched, so we're going to work until every system is patched, or the users are not using strong passwords, and we're going to work until all the strong passwords are in place. And I tell you, it's you really have to assess the risk. And once you're assessing the risk properly, it becomes a lot easier to deal with the boundaries and giving yourself some space and having a life outside of trying to keep everything secure. I mean, if you're just going to be paranoid for the rest of your life about it, you probably need to find something different to do. You have to be able to assess that risk. And once you've assessed it, let it go. That's something we're going to get to. It's going to be another project. It's going to be something else we're going to deal with. Unless it's, I mean, like today, we had a user that shared a password and allowed the attacker to bypass the MFA. They accepted the MFA on their phone whenever that happened. So we had that today. And so we dug in and we did end up being an hour or so after hours dealing with it. But, we came to it, figured it out, found out that they didn't really get as much access as we thought they did. And we're now able to move on. So there are those risk situations where you do have to just put your head down and do it. But they're not every day. At least I hope they're not every day. If they're every day for you, then you definitely need a big team. But hire somebody like Artic to help you with it. And so it really is about just time management, trusting the people around you, getting people around you that you can trust, and then assessing the risks properly.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And I do remember, I don't know if you remember, it was right before I left that someone on third floor downloaded a malicious CAD file, and we had to start unplugging all the computers from the network immediately because it was spreading. And I do remember that. And so there are, like you said, there are situations where you are going to have to put your head down and go 100%. But I also think learning, like you said, to set boundaries, being able to let go of it, putting it on the calendar, staying organized, I think are just really what even I learned, even when going to college, are some core strategies you need to learn as well, being able to keep organizing that and not letting it get to you and consume you. So I think those are valid points. Michael, do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I think that you're going to get burned out. What I recommend, it's going to happen. You're going to get burned out. What I recommend is kind of piggyback off of two things that Ed said. I think that really stood out to me. The first one is trust your teammates to do their jobs, right? I think that's one of the things that we see a lot is people are so passionate about their job, like they're owning like a customer may be, having a security investigation or a security compromise or something happening, and they don't want to leave that customer and hand that over to the next team, but that's their job, right? Everyone has a job here, right? So you need to get off shift, and when your shift ends, you need to hit that off switch. I think that's the biggest problem, that some of the biggest problems that we have at Artic Wolf is we have people that are so passionate about doing this and they want to learn, they have a craving for learning, that they don't have an off switch. So when they're off, they're like always thinking about, did I tackle this the best way? Did I tackle this ticket? Did I triage this incident? Is there a better way to do it? So they kind of worry so much about, the performance and, how they can improve, that they don't have that off switch, so that they can't just, kind of rest and recuperate. So I think that trust your team. And then second, find a company that, that cares about you from an employee standpoint of, you're not just in the number, but look at their PTO plan. So here at Artic Wolf, we have unlimited PTO, or flexible PTO is what it's called, right? We force you to take 80 hours. We've literally, by the time that we get to the last quarter of the year, anyone that's not 80 hours, I am your manager, I will schedule it for you, right? So we force you to get up to 80 hours, but I've had people take all the way up to 9 weeks off. right? So 80 hours is 2 weeks. I've had people take up all the way up to nine weeks because this job is so demanding. It's shift work. It's, constantly being in the weeds. Sometimes you're constantly on an instant response, going from one instant response to the next, depending on where you are in your career. So that's those are the two things I would add is, and kind of like, rehammer, you have to be passionate about this space, or else you're just not going to last. This is not going to be a fun time for you.
Yeah, I'd like to add real quick that security, I mean, I know we talk about the technology and, we're talking about threat hunting and those things, but security is really about the people. And if you don't have a care and a desire to make people's lives better with it, like we want it to be more secure, but we're doing that because we want people's lives to be okay. We want them to be able to do their jobs and use their data and have a secure place they can go and know that the ground truth of what they're dealing with is actually real, and that they're going to deliver their product to their client in a secure way without having losses. If you don't care about that, if you don't care about those people and them doing their job at the best way they can, then you need to reassess, because the technology is cool, but it goes. It comes and goes. There'll be more technology, there'll be less, there'll be different types of it. But will always be there is the people needing to use the data, the people needing to have the data available to them, without it being compromised. Have their ability to deliver something and know that what they're delivering has integrity and is the right thing and hasn't been corrupted in some way. And so I think it's really important to keep that human element aspect in front of you as well, because that'll make it more rewarding. That'll help you not be as burnt out. Or when you do have burnout, because like Michael said, you will. There's definitely highs and lows. When you do have it, you can come back and go, well, you know what? But what I do is really important. It's important for the company and the people, and that's where it's going to mean something to you. Not that you found another vulnerability or you threat hunted something in the perfect fashion and as fast as possible. I think that's very important to keep in front of mind.
I think that's definitely a valid point. Our program is actually tied to the business college a little bit here. And so we are required to take a tech entrepreneurship and innovation class as part of our curriculum. And we just learned about asking the why first, because a lot of people will ask what and how, but they always kind of skip over to why. And we learned that, you may have burnout, but if you don't ask yourself why you're doing the things, it's going to be less rewarding and it's going to feel more taxing than it actually is. So I think that's spot on from what I've heard even over here. And I'm glad that I'm hearing it from professionals in business and they agree on that. And so that's really good to hear. And it's definitely something I'll take note of. The next question that I kind of wanted to touch on is certifications weren't really as big of a deal as they are now when it comes to cybersecurity. Now certifications kind of almost overrule certain aspects of certain degrees, and it's better to have certs and be specialized in certain areas. And so now comes the question from a lot of students, and I've had it from club members, is what certs do I go for? Where do I even start? Where do I look? Do you guys have any recommendations on specific certifications or how you would go about that? Ed, you can go ahead if you want.
I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Michael unless he doesn't want it, because I don't. I think it might be more important for the roles that he deals with the most versus mine. I will say something afterwards, but I think Michael, I'll give you the floor to give the main answer there.
Sure. The shortest answer is, this is what the problem is in cyber security, especially with entry-level people. They don't have a 2-year, a 5-year, a 10-year plan. So they kind of just go out there and what's the latest and the greatest cert? Okay, Sec Plus, okay, Net Plus, okay, CISSP, okay, CCNA, okay, CASP. And I'm like, I see these people and they have like the alphabet soup, and I'm like, why? Like, what are you doing with this, all this stuff? What is your end state? So what I would recommend is first plan out what you want to do. Some people want to go offensive side of the house. That's totally different search than the defensive side of the house. Some people want to stay in IT. That's once again totally different. Some people want to get up to the C-suite, the CIOs, the CISOs, like, depending on where you want to do, what you want to do, how you want to get there, depends on what search you should get for, what search you should go for. For me, I always like the certs that don't expire. That's just me, right? OSCP, CTT plus because I don't want to have to play the CEU games, every 3 years. So I always recommend that you go after those certs that don't expire. But to be, kind of fair to people, obviously you're going to start with Sec plus. That's kind of like your entry level. I would stay away from CEH. Yes, it's on a lot of the recruiters, like, buzzwords. I don't think it's that great of a cert, to be truthfully honest with you, unless they re-upped it in the last 2 years to make it a lot better than, John the Ripper. So my short answer is figure out what you want to do, what's your end state. It's very hard for you guys to coming in entry, but like you have to have a 2, 5, and 10-year plan, and then plan your certifications based off of where do you want to end up. Because if you want to be a CIO, it's a different path than, if you just want to be a manager or director of incident response. There's tons of things that you can do. If you want to be a pen tester, once again, totally different certs, than what you need to do on the other side. So for me, CEH is not a good one. I would do Sec Plus and Net Plus because you get a good background of, one, foundational knowledge of security, and then 2, networking is like the bread and butter. If you don't know networking, you're going to have a hard time in cybersecurity. And then I would start to work my way up to the gold standard. Right now is CISSP. That's just what it is. So that's what my recommendation to you is.
Yeah, I'll add on. That's very good and agree with all of those points. I've had the CISSP since 2005. It's annoying as hell to have to go back and do the re-up the cert. You pay your money and you read some articles and you get to keep your CISSP. I wasn't super impressed with it. Honestly, everything he said is absolutely true, and I agree with it. I will add on that experience is best. Even if you can't get a cert, get some experience. I rarely, like when I'm hiring, I haven't had to hire at Henderson right now, but I have hired at 2 other jobs. And I look for, certs are nice. I like college degrees better. But I really talk about creativity. What are your projects? What projects have you had? If I talk to somebody, and I've talked to people that I've interviewed, talked to candidates, and I'll ask, like, what are you doing at home right now? What's your latest project? And, and it doesn't have to be IT. It could be, painting my daughter's room, it could be anything, but I want to hear about creativity. And then the other side is just system knowledge. And if the certs, like the SEC certs and the net certs that he talked about, are what are going to get you the knowledge that you need, great. But you can also get it just, we're in a golden age of being able to set up VMs and your own networks. And, if you're like, hey, yeah, I got a couple of Pis that I got running, the Pi operating system, and then, I have this other Ubuntu system with Linux on it. And basically I've set up my own IP tables, firewalls, so I can just see how it works back and forth, and I did that with creativity because I want to run a gaming network. That's super powerful to me. I'll take that person anytime over someone that just went to a boot camp to get CISSP or one of the others, because they've got creativity, they've got interest, they've learned about networking, hands-on. And so I think certs are fine. Certs are good. They can prove some things. But from a hiring perspective, I basically, college degree with some experience and creativity shown in some way on home projects or even work projects versus someone who just happens to have a cert. That person with the creativity and can explain the technology to me that they're implementing and why and why they're passionate about it would carry a lot more weight.
Yeah, to just break in as my last point to once again reinforce what Ed's saying is, here's the thing. My first question, and within the first 3 to 5 minutes, how you answer this question is how the interview is going to go. Is my first question to any potential recruit is, what does your lab look like at home? And if you can't explain that to me, you're going to be for a wild ride on my technical interviews, right? But if you can explain, I have a security onion box, I have this, I can blah, 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 like you're going to have I now know that you're, one, passionate about it. And then you're going home and you're using and applying your skill set, not just, memorizing a question and answer for a certification. So huge point that, Ed pointed out is the practical application and your passion in your lab at home means a lot more to me than certifications, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And a lot of people, and I know at least Chad was one of the coworkers that we had at Henderson, and Chad was a great dude because he would always have some sort of home lab going on. He'd always be talking to me about a new project he had. And that always just was wonderful to me and inspired me to keep doing what I was doing at my house, tearing apart computers, tearing apart routers, doing access point lists, stuff like
I,
that.
I
So
remember you having a few, labs at work, if you want to call them labs, that ran up against some of our security requirements that
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
well, you can't do that. You can't do that on the work laptop.
yeah, yeah,
Can't be installing
yeah.
that. Sorry. I appreciated your creativity and your interest, but yeah, we couldn't have that running in the environment.
Yeah. We'll get there one day, right?
Mm.
What would you guys say is the biggest challenge in the cybersecurity sector currently? And I know you guys will probably both have different opinions, and that's fine. Whichever one of you guys wants to take the floor first, I'm willing to hear it.
I'll jump in because it'll be short. It is and always has been the balance between the user functionality and our controls we have to implement. I mean, it's always going to be that. Our biggest security risk are our users, and getting our users to do things the right way is our biggest defense. When things are compromised, it's because of users. When things are safe, it's because of users. And so I would just say that balance, and is just. I mean, I'll just leave it there. I know, Michael, you talked about the IR stuff that you guys have added, and you've talked about some of the technical stuff at Artic Wolf. But I could tell you right now, without any hesitation, and by all measurement, the biggest impact Artic Wolf has had on us is the security awareness team. The security awareness, the managed security awareness, with the volume and cadence and creativity in those video sessions has been huge. It's helped us a significant amount with our end users because it touches the end users directly. I mean, the monitoring is great, the response is needed, but you don't need response if your users are doing things the right way. And that security awareness stuff makes them do things the right way. And so I mean, even if it's not Artic Wolf, anywhere you go, if you can get the users on your side and get them as part of the team and communicate to them the right way, then you're knocking down the biggest challenge we have in cybersecurity, which is the users.
Yeah, I'm glad. My recommendation for anyone that doesn't like cybersecurity awareness training is to put it in British American for Artic Wolf. We have to take it here at Artic Wolf too, and I always put it in British English, or
I have
there's a
heard
couple
from
other.
I've heard from probably
Hilarious.
we have 1,000 people in the company, right? And
Yeah.
and I probably heard from at least 10, and so 1%, 10 of them that the um, that they love the British English. Like, hey, these things are way better than our old one, especially if I put it in British English. Like, so much so that when I address the people who aren't doing their security awareness, I say, hey, if you're having trouble with it, just use the British English version. It's much more entertaining.
It
So
is.
very much a thing.
But to answer your question, for me, it has always been that the adversary only has to be right one time and the defense has to be right every single time. It's always that case. And I think it's always going to be that case, is the offense is always ahead of the defense. And now what we've done with technologies, we reduced the sophistication needed to actually conduct offensive cybersecurity. Or offensive cyber operations. I wouldn't even say cybersecurity because it's not security. It's just hacking and unauthorized access to systems. So we reduce the sophistication needed by Metasploit, with Cobalt Strike, with all these other like GitHub, all the things that you can download off of GitHub, and now with Chat GPT coming out, where you don't even really need to know how to code. You could just go to an AI and be like, I need you to code me, a Mimikatz lookalike with these variables. Boom. That's very scary for the defensive side, because once again, the biggest challenge in cybersecurity right now is offense only has to be right one time, defense has to be right every single time. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and we've poked a lot of holes. Like when Microsoft, 3-4 years ago, when we ended up with Office 365 and all those wonderful enterprise applications that can plug into it. Users can now give their entire calendar away to Garmin on their Garmin app on their phone. They can. Every email can be read by some email sorting tool that they can plug in because they can authorize and delegate that access. And so there are lots of different technical things. But if you look at the actual data loss, I don't, Chance, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I look at the annual reports. Like the big one I look at is the Verizon breach report. Look at that every year. It records actual breaches. Companies that have actually been breached, the data that's actually been lost, the users that have actually been compromised, and it reports on that. And so you can see how those were breached. 95% of them start with an email. So, I know we've got a lot of like sophisticated, like, just this week, VMware has been popped over and over and over because of a vulnerability that they had in ESXi. And so, that's a very technical problem. But if you take and you measure that against the amount of data that's been lost, the money that's been spent on attacks that have compromised simple users, it's like a fraction of a fraction. It's really small for the systems that have been compromised, the amount of data that's been lost. And so I think while our challenges can be measured technically, I think we we really it always comes back to the user and that piece. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. I guess I'm beating a dead horse here, saying it over and over.
Layer
but
8 issues every single
layer 8
time. Layer
issues,
8.
yeah. And it's the thing, as a cybersecurity leader, as a manager and leader in the company, when I come in the door, my challenges are people, not necessarily technology. I'll just leave it at that.
So, hi, my name is Lori. I also co-own this cybersecurity club, but I had a question for Michael. So I know that moving forward within the next couple of years, many are wanting to switch to using AI as part of their flagging system, because of ever since COVID, we've had more flags ever since in the time of day. I heard over 5 million some points, and I know that you have a global SOC. How do you think Artic Wolf is just going to kind of use AI within their systems going forward?
Yeah, great question. I think that any company worth their salt is going to use, I think Bard's coming out from Google and ChatGPT as the foundation for what they want to do in order to try to get ahead of the adversary, right? So AI right now and machine learning is sort of difficult and really expensive, and to do it right, because you have to fine tune and get really, really granular with it. And then it has to iterate through all that stuff. With ChatGPT, with these AIs that are coming out now, it has just access to all the data that you kind of have don't have at your fingertips. Artic Wolf is only as great as what Artic Wolf's customers are or what the community is sharing with Artic Wolf. So what I think that Artic Wolf can do, and what we are looking into doing, is partnering with these AI companies, with Google and Bard and OpenAI and ChatGPT, to see how can we better become more effective and more efficient, and shore up gaps and deficiencies within our research and development, within our detection engineering, within our product, with ChatGPT, because any AI that comes out, because of the simple fact that we're always research and development is the most expensive thing that a company is going to pay for. So I think the AI really covers that for you, giving you a wealth of resources that you may not have access to. So that's what I'm thinking about using it, is how do I build complex detections, especially with all consuming all this intelligence of this APT is doing this TTP, and they're changing these TTPs. How do I get proactive? Everyone wants to get proactive in cybersecurity. I think that we can start to get there with these AIs, is starting to become very more proactive, so that right now Artic Wolf is really reactive on the SOC side of the house. I react to an event happening. I want to get to the point where that event never happens, because I'm proactively stopping that from happening. So I think that's how we leverage AI, and I think we're in for a wild ride. The offense is going to use this technology to become better and lower, once again, that sophistication and capability that's needed to get into the space, and the defense side has to use the to try to counter or predictive analysis what adversaries are going to do, what they're going to break.
Sweet, thank you.
That was a good question. That was interesting.
That's one thing I'll add, if you don't mind. With regards to machine learning, I know we've been doing machine learning for quite a while in the cybersecurity space, and so I one of my favorite uses of it is baselining, and so we've had baselining for a long while, and I don't think it's AI necessarily in the way that you think about ChatGPT and those, but it is definitely machine learning. We use CrowdStrike as our endpoint protection, and it is very much using machine learning. It doesn't, instead of loading a bunch of signatures on the system like your traditional antivirus would, it actually uses machine learning to know the baseline of what a machine should do, and then identifying whenever it's not doing that. So it doesn't have to have a specific executable signature to see. It just has to know that that executable really isn't supposed to bypass UAC, and so then it knows. And so that's kind of a machine learning. I had some exposure to another one a while back where they pulled in all your log files and built a baseline for activity for all the users. And so, you know, if you know what your users are going to do day to day, and you've built a machine learning algorithm around that so that it can say, hey, they're outside of that, and then you identify that and you find out, well, hey, it's because it's not that user anymore, it's an adversary. So we have been using machine learning for quite a long time. I'd say at least 5 years, maybe more, probably more actually, probably closer to 8, in the cybersecurity realm, just for those things that the humans really can't identify. And I'd say, Michael, and your team probably are using some of those to highlight things. You talked about screens for your teams. I bet the things that come up on your team screens are things that have machine learning has helped identify that, hey, this log is outside of its normal boundaries, and it's come up. So I think we're definitely using it. A little less sophisticated than maybe like Chat GPT and those kind of things that are kind of mimicking the human interface, but definitely using it at a like 2 steps below that, if you will, to identify anomalies that are outside of baselines.
Yeah, I think that's huge. A great point of user endpoint behavior analysis, UEBA, is something that's always talked about in this space. But getting to that, I think that's going to be huge for AI to actually accelerate that and push us, past the limits that we are currently, to getting to that point where we can ingest your network and host baseline and understand any deviation from that on any user or any endpoint. That's going to be huge. That's going to be
I'm kind of
groundbreaking for
excited.
the defense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of excited for plain language. Like if I can just walk in the door, bring up my interface and say, show me all the users that did something with this email. And it comes back with a good explanation and kind of something I can understand, instead of me having to do spreadsheet jockey, to try to figure it out. If I could just ask the question and have it answer in a way that that I can take and then use almost immediately, instead of having to synthesize, that would be really powerful. So if it can get to that kind of thing, and I think that's the same dream people have around search. They want to just get in and do a search. Hey, I need to make a meal plan thing for this week. Can you help me do that? And it comes back and gives you an English version of a meal plan, instead of just telling you, here's 15 recipes. That's the kind of stuff that I think where this AI stuff is really going to help bring it, open it up more for people that maybe aren't going to know how to use, Link to or PowerShell to synthesize something down, or Power BI to synthesize something down from all these data points into something you can actually report to a committee, or report to a team to have them take some action. If I can just, hey, I need to know, what users opened this email, and it can go out and identify all the users that open that email, and it says, hey, here's the response and what you might need to say. Do you want me to send this email to them? Yes, please send that email that you crafted for me. Those kinds of things I think are very exciting. Star Trek, but exciting.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. We've gone through all the questions, so I'm just going to open up for a Q&A. I don't know if anyone on Zoom has any questions at all. Does anyone have questions here in person? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Mallory, Jason, do you have anything you would like to add or question?
No, I just thank you guys for taking your time to speak to the students and reaffirm what we're teaching here, and everything you guys said is stuff I say daily, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, guys,
Cool.
we appreciate your time here, and we honestly are thankful for you guys coming out here and being with us. So anytime, you guys are welcome. If you guys have information you always want to share with us, or give us any more tips, we're always going to be happy to hear them. So we appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to ramble on about things. And you have my email if you have any questions or follow up, or just have something you want to talk about, let me know.
Definitely. Thank you guys so
Same.
much.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.